everyone, and welcome back to Pick Up the Phone podcast with me, your host, Diamond Denise. And y'all, this is a podcast where we may laugh and we're gonna definitely cry, but we're gonna always lean on God's strength to keep going. So, hey, welcome back. This is episode number 6. I think this is episode number 6. No, it was 7. Oops. Yeah, I guess we're 7 in the game. We record ahead of time, so sometimes your girl forgets. But welcome back to another episode, period. I'm so happy to have you guys back and tuning in. Don't forget, if you have a voicemail, you can leave a voicemail as a comment, as a DM, any way you want to leave it. As long as you reach out and let me know that it's a voicemail, we will actually say it on the next show. And I will start to utilize your name unless you say otherwise. So I would love to, shout out anything you have to say. Comments, questions, topic ideas, whatever. Let's do it. All right. So how was y'all's week? I had a pretty great week. I would say my week was busy. I feel like every week has been a little busy, y'all. I'm busy. But you know what? I am pushing, and we're going to get into today's episode, which is going to be really helpful for me. So that may shift how my weeks will be coming up. Don't forget, if you are enjoying the show, rate the show, like it, review it. Please don't forget to do that. Thumbs up on YouTube, all of the things, girls. Let's get into it, y'all. So I am finding that it is so easy to talk about some things, but sometimes it's hard for me, myself, to do it. I feel like the last few episodes, every time I'm talking about something, I feel like God gave me some insight about it, or I feel like I've overcome it. But then something in that episode, I feel like I end up going through in life, like in real time. So I also made a post recently and I said, this episode, season 1, seems like it's all about healing. So maybe this season, God is just bringing up, building up, tearing up that foundation, tearing up some things that we maybe have settled in, tearing up some areas that we thought we overcame, so we can truly be transformed and truly be healed. Like, that's really what I think season 1 is all about. So y'all, if we're going to heal, we are going to heal. So let's heal. All right. So I was, and maybe I may still be feeling or going through some of the things I'm talking about, and maybe a little bit even today. However, I thought what I was kind of experiencing was something that I overcame in the past, y'all. I came here today and I was planning on having one conversation with you guys. I was for sure, this is what we're going to talk about, and my conversation has shifted the day of. So what I was going through, y'all, I thought it was very similar to something else I had experienced back in the summer. Back in the summer, I feel like I was just experiencing a little bit of tension. Not that I was like on hold, but I felt like things were just a little bit harder. I felt like I had to work just a little bit stronger or a little bit more, or I had to push a little bit harder just to even like get into the presence of God. I felt like there was just something like, they always say like when you start going through stuff, like you were like on the edge of a breakthrough. And that's really how I was feeling. I was just feeling like that I was a little overwhelmed. I had a lot going on, and it was just like a push or something. I just feel like I could not break through, y'all. I felt like I could not break through. And we wrestle not against flesh and blood. We know that, right? We know that there is always something spiritual going on, and I'm not taken away from that, because I do think that there is an aspect of that spiritual thing that happens. So I definitely would not exclude that. Personally, I do feel like I am going into a season of just more intense fasting that will happen, or just like a time that I feel like God is putting on me. And so I will go through that. But, I just felt like I could not get through it. And if y'all know PYB, shout out to him. I wish we could have him on the podcast. We will one day. But something that I know that he always said was like, when you are losing in the natural, it's because you're not fighting in the spiritual. And so I do still think that applies. And I do think we have to think about different situations, right? Like I know sometimes I overthink everything, and I can tend to just be a little harder on myself. So I think what he said definitely still does apply, right? Like there is a spiritual part of us that we do have to make sure that we are feeding. So 100%, like that's what it could be. But I am learning to just like also give myself grace and not be so hard on myself with things. But I felt like, y'all, I was just pouring out a lot. I was pouring out a lot in a lot of different areas, in relationships, things I had my hands in. You guys know I'm in school, work. Oh my goodness, work has been a lot lately. This is a very busy season. We're kind of coming up to the end of the school year anyway. So I just felt like I was doing so much. And then you guys know we started our podcast that we're super excited about, loving it. But you know, there's a pouring that is still taking place, right? And so your girl was just pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring. And I felt like in the moments that I was able to like fill up again, I had to pour out again, even in relationships and phone calls and people and just all different areas, right? So I was feeling a little depleted. I felt a little bit like I was on this, like I was that hamster on the wheel, just going, 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 get a little bit more strength and then going, going, going again, right? And I was noticing that even I was becoming a little more frustrated easily. Things that would not frustrate me as much started to frustrate me. And it was like little things. So it was like I wasn't being completely deceived by the enemy's devices, right? Like I wasn't completely unaware of them, which I thank God for. But I was like, something is off. Like, why is this bothering me a little bit more now? Why am I getting a little frustrated with this person? Why am I getting frustrated about this situation? So that already we know can be signs of something is off when you begin to get more irritable than you normally are. Like I said, I had to push closer. I do feel like there's times in your walk with God as you do begin to mature that, there's levels. I don't have all the terminology for it, but just basically what I'm trying to say is I do think that in your walk and as you begin to mature, you realize that sometimes even if you don't feel God, it's not that he has left you, right? So there are times when you do have to go a little bit deeper, go a little bit hungry, go a little bit hungry. Am I hungry? Go a little bit stronger, go a little bit deeper, work a little bit harder to push towards those moments and really press in those moments that you are seeking God, right? We know that's going to happen. So again, me thinking this and seeing this, I'm like, okay, yeah, this remind me of back in the day when I had to do that. So I know what I need to do. And to be honest, I was prepared to say to myself, and I was prepared to say to y'all today, it's time to fight. Okay. It's a war. It's warfare, which again, like I said, that does happen. So we got to be aware of those things too. But I was like, oh yeah, we fighting. The devil is after you, girl. You doing all these things and he's coming to take you out. Like, but this is where I was going. And I was prepared to talk to y'all today about putting on the full armor of God. I'm not even completely done studying it, but that is what we were going to go into because that is just the time that I had. This is why it's good to have people that you can pick up the phone and have a conversation with in moments where you do feel depleted. And I have told y'all before, like that pride thing, we getting rid of that. And my pride is not like pride that I'm thinking right about myself, but more so like I don't always reach out and I want to kill that thing in the head. So when that came up to me, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and hold these thoughts in my head. I'm going to just reach out and ask somebody, how did you overcome this? How do you feel? What's going on? In me feeling all these other emotions, I know I need to, we just talked about it. Literally just talked about it, right? Martha and Mary. We literally just talked about this. And I know that I need to, make sure I'm in the presence of God. Make sure that I'm not focusing so much on purpose and I'm missing his presence. But I also need to be okay with saying, hey, can you talk to me? Hey, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to navigate these feelings. So I did reach out to LYB. I got to get both of them on the podcast, y'all. They both hopefully will be guests and that'll happen one day. But in me explaining how I was feeling and all these things, y'all know what she told me? What do y'all think she told me? I want y'all to write in the comments if you're watching on YouTube what you think she said. Take a minute and write that. But what she told me is, you know what? I hear you. And she encouraged me and she gave me all these things that she said and shared. But then at the end of it, or really at the beginning of it, she said, you need a rest. I said, rest? What? In my head, I was thinking, interesting. Because I think sometimes we do tend to over spiritualize things. Not saying, again, not neglecting that part because that is a real thing. But it was so simple, y'all. Like, we are still human. And I think sometimes we do forget that. We're not superwoman. We weren't meant to be superwoman. We weren't meant to carry the weight of the world. That's God's job. You need a rest. And when she said that, I don't know, like I felt a lot freer. Something was kind of released from me, and maybe some pressures of whatever it was, me trying to hold on to, like I definitely felt lighter. And so I wanted to go to our scripture. Our first scripture rather is Genesis 2 verses 2 through 3. Genesis 2 verse 2, and it says, "And on the seventh day God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done." So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. Sit down somewhere. Okay? Sit down. It's okay to not always be the one to show up. It's okay to not always be the one that has the answers. It doesn't take anything from you if you are not always there, always doing. Something that I've known forever is that you're only going to be as good to everyone else as you are to yourself. You can only show up and be there for everyone else as much as you can be there for yourself. I don't know. It hit differently when you hear that from somebody else. I feel like I've said that to people so many times. I've told people that, but it hit different when someone told me that. When I looked up the word rest, it made me think of obviously sitting down, right? But then I was thinking of quietness. So when I looked up quiet, it said that quiet was a quietness in God, or just quietness to get closer or reconnected back to God. It said a state free from motion or disturbance, a state of reconciliation to God, free from motion or disturbance. That means, Lord, quiet the noise in my mind, but Lord, quiet the noise around me. It's too much going on. There's too much moving around me. There's too many distractions. I know we talked about last episode, distractions, being, people or things that we're, connected to, or all these other things. But what about the stuff going on around me? What about when you become the distraction? Ooh, what about when you become the distraction that's keeping you out of the presence of God? So let me read 1 Kings 19, 12, and 13, y'all. This was good to me, because I think in all of this seeking, like we said, like I was saying in the beginning, right? I'm like, oh, I need to get closer to God. I need to hear him. I need to do this. Okay. 1 Kings kind of got me together a little bit, because I was reminded of something that happened to Elijah. And so 1 Kings 19, and I just want to read it because I wanted you guys to hear it in how the Bible said it. But verse 12, it says, "And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave." You guys have to read 1 Kings 19, but basically, this is when Elijah had kind of fled from Jezebel, right? And so when he fled from Jezebel, God ended up sending an angel that gave him strength, right? When the angel was there, I believe the angel, he was like instructed to go stand on the mountain in his presence, right? And he was listening basically to hear from God. And so I think it was a wind, fire, and earthquake. All of those things came, didn't hear nothing. And then after all of that, finally he spoke in a still, quiet voice. That blessed me, because it's like, sometimes we are expecting to hear from God, but sometimes God is speaking in the quietness, in the still, quiet things. We think we may hear from him because as long as we stay busy, right? We think we're going to hear from him in all the doing and all the dramatic and all the big things, but sometimes you got to sit down to really hear from him. It's the quietness that we hear God, right? So sometimes when we literally stop and smell the roses, we can actually hear God. And that's what I was reminded when after speaking with her. Like in the moments when we just relax and chill out, that's when God can speak. That's when we can really hear God's voice. We know that the devil's going to send distractions, right? But what about the distractions that we are creating? What about when we become the distraction? What about when we put so many things on our calendar and so many things on our schedule? We're involved in so many other things that we become the distraction, that we create the distraction. The devil don't even got to work that hard because you creating the distractions that's keeping you out of his presence. You're filling your calendar with so many things. We make time to do things, but we don't make time to rest. We don't schedule rest. I know I don't. That's hard for me. I don't really schedule rest. I've never, I don't know what she did, but she just made me just see it in a different way where it opened my eyes to be like, wow, I schedule, I plan, I make time for all these things. I've been saying I'm going to go get a massage for the longest, and I have not intentionally made the time for it. I've been saying I want to get back into Pilates. I was doing Pilates. I was doing really good with it, but I haven't made the time for it. Those are things that help me pour back into myself as well. Those are things that I can do for myself. In also sitting down, because I have too much on my schedule probably, but we don't make time for all those. Those things end up getting put on the back burner. But we got to prioritize stillness. We have to prioritize quietness. We have to schedule times where it's hey, you know what? My phone is on D&D the whole week. My phone is on D&D the whole weekend. I'm not answering anyone's calls. I don't have the answer. I don't want to think about the answer. I need to sit and not always just I'm going to sit and binge watch, but maybe sometimes your sitting may look like a binge watch. Maybe watch the show, watch the show, but also be intentional about having quiet time with God. I think they go hand in hand, and I think sometimes we separate them. Maybe go for the walk, and then God's going to speak to you as you go for the walk. Go work out and go back into that workout class. God may have something to speak to you as you begin to work out, right? Go buy some roses. Go sit at a coffee shop. God can speak in those places as well. I think sometimes we limit God and we feel like he can only speak in certain situations and certain things we do, but we got to take the limits off of God, okay? It's okay to sit down. It's okay to rest. That was really good for me. What I thought about as I just began to, really sit with this is that, I'm always talking about grace to grow. I'm always talking about growth, but we have what we need to grow in our assignment, and we can't grow in soil that wasn't meant for us to grow in. We can only do what we were called and created to do. We can't do what everybody else tries to call and create us to do. You don't have to fit every box, even if you're good at it. Just because you're good at it doesn't mean you were called to it or graced for it. And I think when we realize that we start to operate outside of the things that maybe God wants us to do, because people may say, oh, you're so good at this, do that. Oh, you're so great at that, show up here. Then we begin to feel that wearing out or burnout because we're operating outside of our own art, outside of the soil that we were meant to grow in. Whew. Your girl gonna be free, okay? Free and healed. Indeed. Free indeed, okay? And it's not a bad thing. I wrote this down too, but y'all, it's not bad to show up and it's not bad to be accountable. I think those things are important. I think they're very valuable, as you should. You should definitely show up and you should be accountable. But we have to make sure that we're also accountable to God and stewarding our temples well. We have to not make ourselves feel guilty and guilt trip ourselves into operating outside of that, operating outside of what God has called us to do, operating outside of his will, and not planning time to rest and really hear his voice, because he speaks in the still and he speaks in the quiet. And you and I have grace to grow in the soil we were meant to be in. That's what I had to, I literally just share what I'm learning and sitting with. And I pray that something was said that blesses you. I pray that you really begin to just sit with this. I feel like it was just very sobering for me. And I pray that it's I pray that it's not a little, I pray that it's sobering for you as well. So that you can truly be healed in season 1. All right. That's it, y'all. Ooh, that feels so good. I feel so good. I feel good. I really feel good, actually, y'all. I feel like a second wind, some energy, something just kind of hit me. And I hope it hits you too. So thank you. Thank you for spending time with me today. Thank you for watching this episode. Thank you for listening to this episode. If today's episode blessed you, spoke to you, I would love for you to share it. Share it with a friend, a coworker, a sister, a girl, your mama. Share it with somebody, okay? Leave a review so that others can be encouraged too. And remember, no matter what season you are in, keep picking up the phone. Until next time, keep your connection on and your faith strong. All right.